Thank you. I am what I am dreaming. I've only just begun. You are who you are becoming. The truffle is a fascinating bit of fungus. Funky, expensive, mysterious. They're like your aunt who drops in every other Christmas with lavish presents and stories you're not sure you should believe. Best taken in small doses, both the ant and the truffles. These unassuming-looking mushrooms spring forth, like most of their fungal siblings, from strands of hyphae, pieces of the mycelium that are invisible to us most of the time. Efforts to cultivate truffles, which given the price they command in the market you would think would be robust, well, they've tried, believe me, and the efforts to actually cultivate truffles have been, mixed. Mushroom reproduction is not as simple as the approach that most plants and animals take. Right? The general approach in the animal and plant kingdom is that there are two things that we bring together, male and female varieties of whatever it is, whether it's a cottonwood tree or a mallard. We bring them together and make a new life. But mushrooms often have several sex varieties, sometimes numbering in the tens of thousands for a given variety. The current record holder is the split gill fungus, which has about 23,000. And each of those can pair with any of the other 22,999. Hundreds of millions of possibilities, hundreds of millions of ways to take something that is and make more of it. And when mushroom cultivators work to produce some of these varieties artificially, including particularly the truffle, they struggle to figure out how to find the right pairings of spores, the right conditions, the right bacteria in the soil, the right temperature that will produce the desired outcome with regularity and reliability. One truffle cultivator I read about said that his typical success rate in making a black truffle grow tended to hover around 30%. Less than half of the time what he did worked. One year, where he did the things he always did, he had 100% success. Everything he did produced a truffle. When asked by the writer and biologist Merlin Sheldrake to explain what did you do to make that result so good, he simply said, "I have no idea what I did right." Not even the experts know how it works. Fungal bodies are constantly under revision, recombination, and reimagining. Right? And not even the most expert people can really figure it out or explain. So why is it then, I wonder so often, that so many people believe that human beings, in all of our complexity, experience biological sex and subsequently gender, interconnected but distinct, though often conflated, in only two rigid categories? Why are so many people so convinced that we can be so easily sorted, easily boxed in, easily understood in the context of only two ways of being? And maybe you are thinking to yourself, okay, Reverend Hannah, that's true out there, but in here we allow for a third rigid option because we are more evolved than they are. And I give thanks that we are allowing for a third option, but I would say that if we still primarily consider gender something that exists in three distinct categories instead of only two, that we have missed the most tender, the most beautiful, the most possible, and the most ephemeral pieces of what our trans and non-binary and two-spirit and gender expansive kin live into every day. Maybe you're thinking, okay, but I have evolved even further. And I know that gender is a spectrum. Man is over here, and woman is over here, and all the non-binary people lurk androgynously in the middle. But what if gender isn't even like a set of polarities with a spectrum between them? Because, my goodness, I must say, I am not interested in buying into even a teeny tiny bit into the rigid and brittle and binary ideologies that are gaining so much ground around gender in our world today. I don't want any part of anything that looks or sounds or feels like what is driving these brittle ideologies. And though we cannot always see the ideologies, sometimes they too are hidden. We certainly see the fruit that they bear. We see the state of Kansas invalidating trans people's driver's licenses. We see the International Olympic Committee saying that trans women cannot compete in Olympic sports, which is one of those things where it's important to remember that that probably applies to like 1.5 people in the whole world. And in Idaho, there is a bill passed by both the House and Senate at the state level waiting for the governor's signature that would make a trans person using the bathroom a felony. These fruits that those ideologies bear reflect a commitment to the idea not only that we have to adhere to the binary about what gender is, but that transgressing those categories in public is somehow a threat to our collective safety, and that defending the edges of the definition of man and woman is something that we must police actively. Which is always, when I see them getting up to that same old stuff, I think, if it's so natural, why do you have to work so hard to enforce it? But I don't always say that out loud. But I'll say it to you guys. As Unitarian Universalists, though, we reject that rigid definition of gender, not because it is the current politically correct thing to do, not because it's a liberal platform position. Right? We reject that rigid ideology because we believe that transformation is one of the primary ways we practice and live our faith in the world. Right? And when I hear people say that the way you show up out of the womb determines everything from which bathroom you use, to which letter is on your driver's license, to which sports you can play, to which clothes you can wear, I say that's against my religion. Because if we value transformation, if we value unfolding identity rather than calcified self, then we simply cannot understand gender as a distinct set of categories into which human beings can be neatly sorted. Then what is it, you ask? Can I get a foothold? A signpost? Some way to understand how it is that we divvy out pronouns and bathrooms and understand how we move in the world? How do we understand the ways we use makeup and hair and clothing and wigs and silicone and hormones to present ourselves to each other? What if gender is like mushroom hyphae, the little tendrils that we can't see, reaching out and recombining until there are so many ways of being that not even the experts can say definitively what is going on? What if gender is like the electromagnetic spectrum? And when we pass part of it through a prism, some pieces are made complex and visible, but other pieces of it we only know by the impressions they leave behind. like a sunburn from ultraviolet light. What if gender is like a flame? It lives temporarily, the visible result of a chemical reaction, and we get to see for a time what it is. What if gender is like a snowflake? No, two of them are the same, and they get more and more intricate the more closely you examine them. And what if gender like that is not the sole purview of people identified as trans or non-binary, or two-spirit, or gender expansive? What if I told you that your gender, yes, yours, is like mushroom hyphae, like wavelengths of electromagnetic spectrum, like a flame, like the crystalline structure of a snowflake? And that even if you use the name and the pronouns and the label that your parents gave you when you first arrived on this mortal coil, there are pieces of you under the surface, beyond the visible spectrum, things that we cannot see that make you who you are. For me, the great sadness of all those rigid worldviews and ideologies is not that they diminish the humanity of trans people, because trans people are whole and wholly loved. Full stop, no qualifiers. Their worth, their beauty, and their wholeness is not up for debate. No. Those rigid categories, those brittle understandings of gender and biology, and the people so hell-bent on forcing them on others, the humanity they diminish is their own, because they cannot perceive all of the possibility contained within them. Right? When people have those brittle ideologies, it is not that they diminish the full humanity of our trans siblings. It is that they are cutting themselves off from their ability to fully understand the possibility contained within them. What a sad and small way to understand your gender. Our work, then, is to keep lifting up the transformation that we see, that we perceive, that we know is happening. To keep lifting up this life-giving, liberating lens about gender beyond the binary, beyond a rigid third category, beyond two polarities, gender into something more expansive and beautiful and possible. Not because it is politically expedient, because it rarely is. Not because it is popular among our peers, but because our faith demands it of us. To be the agents of transformation, of mushroom hyphae gender, of snowflake gender, of flame gender, of electromagnetic spectrum gender. To be the agents of that transformation we wish to see in the world. May it be so. Amen.